This is Pitch Please, the show where people who play games pitch ideas to people who make them. This week...
You grab a hammer off a shelf and you think you're going to knock the guy out with it, but it just makes a little squeaky sound when it hits him on the head, and then you have to figure out what to do from there.
Hello and welcome to Pitch Please. I'm Alex, that's my name, and I'm also joined by developer Chris from Foggybox.
Hello.
Hello, Chris.
That's my name.
Developer James.
Hello.
From Catastrophic Overload.
That is my name.
No Tom, because his internet just died, like about 5 minutes before we started recording this. So instead, we have, again, it's Matt.
Hello.
Hello, Matt. Welcome back. Thank you very much. You're our
for having me.
think tank engine today.
Good.
Yeah.
The beacons were lit, Pitch Please called for aid, and Matt Castle answered. So that's what happened.
A noble cause. And also, I'm delighted to introduce a very special guest. It's Alex Navarro of Nextlander.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey. You're very welcome. So you are like, would you say games journalist? Is that how you would describe yourself?
I think you could have accused me of that at one point in my career. Certainly, I mostly served as a critic for most of my career, but I've also, I've done a lot of podcasting, a lot of video stuff over the years. I lightly dabbled in journalism, though I think there are far more journalists than I am. So
you kind of share some similar ground to Matt, you used to do the back in the old days, right?
Yeah.
A bit of that.
I'm still scrabbling in the journalist minds. So.
But today, you're a games pitcher, right? You're gonna give us your idea, which I'm looking forward to, because I'm a little bit nervous because I feel like Alex has probably played more games than we've all had hot dinners combined. So I don't know what is going to come out of this. I don't know what.
Guaranteed more than me.
More than James, definitely.
No question.
Yeah, I've always, I've always been a person who talks about video games, but I'm always very quick to caution that I have never made a video game. When I have worked at game studios, it's always been on the promotions or QA side of things. I am not a designer. I'm not a developer. So everything I conceptualize is from the armchair, or should I say gamer chair perspective. So, I have no idea if any of these ideas I have are any good, but I'll just,
that's exactly
I'll
how
leave
we
it
like
to the
it
jury.
Here. Yes. Well, wonderful. So, okay. Yeah. So I guess let's make a start. What is your pitch? What is your idea, please?
Okay, so I'll pick one. I have two ideas here, and I want to know which one you guys are more interested in. I'm just going to give you the quick one-sentence strap line for each one.
Oh.
One is Supernatural American Truck Simulator. The other one is Idiot Hitman.
Oh, those are both great. Okay, all right.
I mean,
now,
both of those.
I know Matt Castle is a huge Hitman fan, if I remember correctly.
And I love an idiot.
And yeah, I'm leaning towards Idiot Hitman.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the Supernatural truck, that kind of intrigued me, but there's something about the punch of Idiot Hitman that just is really grabbing me. James, what are you voting for?
I mean, I'm happy to go with the group. I personally like the Supernatural Truck Simulator, but
Okay. Well, I mean,
let's go Hitman.
Let's start with Hitman and see where it goes, right?
Yeah.
All right, Hitman is the one I have way less of a long pitch for, so here we go.
Perfect.
So the basic idea is that Hitman, especially in the recent versions of it, are very much slapstick comedy. But they are always slapstick comedy from the perspective of a character who is so good at killing that he can just do these Warner Brothers cartoon things to people and come out completely unscathed, completely normal. And he just is always in complete control of everything going on in the environment. What I want is the opposite of that. I want a character who is, let's just say, whether they have found their way to the hitman profession on purpose or not, they do not belong there. This is a Mr. Bean, Frank Drebin style character who is, maybe at the core of their being sort of invested in what they're doing for a living, but in no way actually talented at it. And so it is a similar notion of a clockwork environment where you can go around and, you can interact with different aspects of the environment. There are characters moving around. You either have a target or targets that you need to hit. but everything you do in the environment should not result in the actual expected action. If a person thinks that they are going to poison the food that this person is going to eat, that should result in someone else getting poisoned and chaos coming in around the edges. If they're going to use like the laser beam in their watch to try and assassinate someone from a distance, what they should actually do is hit a rope that causes a chandelier to fall and causes just increasingly intense levels of chaos throughout the level that somehow can eventually result in you winning the mission or, you know, killing the target, but it should never be the way you want it to be. It should never be done with any real precision, and it should never be done without a whole lot of collateral damage, both in terms of death and destruction.
Okay.
I love it.
I mean, Chris and James, what are your immediate thoughts as the developers here?
I was thinking mechanically. I was thinking how you could, because obviously with Hitman, you're making a decision, and because if you've followed like an NPC's path for a while, you know that the path of that NPC. Okay, so when he comes through the door next, this thing that I've triggered will happen. So I guess in that, I'm trying to figure out the mechanic of how do you make something that you think is going to happen not happen, or the opposite effect. So maybe you could do, rather than like knowing the thing that's going to happen, you get a chance that when you're going to trigger this thing, one of two things is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And whether we give the player like a 50-50 chance, and we telegraph that to them, like, okay, you've got a 40% chance if you poison this, that it's going to go to the right person. Or, you know, you pull this rope and the thing you expect to happen will happen. The problem is with that is that from a player's perspective, you find it with XCOM, is that people always feel like percentages are not in their favor. Like 90% is a high percentage, but there's still 10% chance that you're going to fail.
Sure.
So it's how you balance that and how you go, okay, yeah, that thing is going to happen. Because that could lead to lots of cascading effects of things. And it could be really funny, or it could be very frustrating. Right. Hopefully more funny. But that's my thoughts on it, is do we go with that whole, you give them the options of what could happen per thing that they want to attempt.
Yeah. I mean, James, what about you?
I mean, at the moment in my head, I've got, do you remember the game Heavy Rain?
Yes.
And there's a great clip.
I know which video. I know which clip you're thinking.
The video online where someone, it's all QuickTime events, and they miss every single one. So
right.
The guy's chasing the bad guy down, and it just keeps bashing into doors, tripping over tables, and I'm like, oh man, do we go with like what Hitman is, or do we go more like, is it kind of like a scripted kind of QuickTime silly event kind of approach? And
I'm not opposed to the idea, certainly, of like, you know, big events and significant things within the map being sort of mapped to QuickTime things to sort of prevent maybe the idea of like the chaos getting too far away and like too much frustration for the player not getting what they want. Mm-hmm. Like maybe the idea is, let's say, you know, you think you're going to untie a rope and the chandelier is going to fall on the target. You hit the QuickTime event and you do it perfectly, but then the chandelier falls on your head, you know, like that kind of thing, where it's like, yes, you have done the expected action, but the thing you think is going to happen doesn't. And then you have to figure out what to do after the chandelier falls on your head.
Yeah.
So you could kind of like still blend in the idea of choices, which Chris was mentioning, but like, yeah, do you do it just literally, you are maybe on rails? I don't know. That would certainly make it much more easy to develop than, you can wander around a whole scene. But
player freedom is always a pain.
Another game I kind of think about
Fun
in the context,
is always a pain.
Yeah, another game I kind of think about in the context of this is a game I really like called Jazzpunk. That game is not really about much other than poking around an environment and just seeing what kind of stupid things fall out of it. Right. And a lot of really stupid shit happens in that game. Like it is very much a slapstick comedy mentality. Mm. And, you know, it has that kind of like quick rhythm of like, you know, the jokes just kind of keep like falling at you over and over and over again. And that's kind of more what I'm like. It's less about like the intricate clockwork sort of environment that like a Hitman has. Like in my mind, it has some of that. But like, it's not as reliant on a character is always going to be in this place, so you want to make sure you're lining up this exact precision thing. It's more about like, I just want to kick everything and see what happens, like what explodes, what confetti falls out, that kind of thing. And, there is a mission in there, but the mission is less the point than just the sheer chaos that can come from just poking at everything.
Yeah, kind of like that.
You've assassinated your target, but only because you've also accidentally destroyed the entire building.
Yeah, you've also murdered everyone in the building. Yes.
Everyone else is also dead. So, Matt, what do you think about this? Because you actually pitched a Hitman-esque game a little while last year, right? Albeit much more serious than this.
Well, I pitched like a very old Hitman who kind of leveled down between levels as he kind of forgot powers and became like more limited that way. But like, I wonder if I know like I know it comes up a lot in this podcast is the idea of like sort of slapstick from like something being like harder to control is maybe also an option. Like you make the Hitman so over elaborate that keeping everything, all those plates spinning, like you're bound to fail, like you're destined to fail with him. A bit like, we always say Octodad.
I was just thinking Octodad, yes.
But like, because Octodad is the kind of like, controls something very difficult in a really mundane situation, and the comedy is just how much you like mess up that mundane situation. But you could almost have a very intricate version where like the combination of keys or buttons you're having to press for actions, there's just so much to remember that it spirals out of control from there. Or would that just be like the least satisfying thing to play ever? I don't know.
I think you'd have to dial it back a bit. I think maybe more towards the human fall flat Gang Beast style, physically animated, rather than the really sort of over the top of Octodad, because you would get a bit more finesse, especially like if I'm going to pull this thing out of this cupboard and I'm dragging it along, especially with dead bodies, that would be hilarious. And just, as you go over like wet patches on the ground that you've put down there, you slip and you hear like that slide whistle noise as you sort of fall and a bucket falls off a ladder and hits you on the head. And then your controls are reversed for 10 seconds because you're, dizzy and things like that.
I want to see you dragging a body and then like the trousers get snagged on a nail and then you rip the trousers off and now you've got a dude with no pants and everyone's like, what's going on here? That's kind of where I'm at with this.
Nice.
I just want to make sure it's like, when I think of Frank Drebin, he being an idiot, but for sure, but he never kind of gets hurt himself from memory. He's always like, it's almost like, is this game the wish fulfillment, the game? Is it just like, I want to kill this guy and I do a thing and it just does what I want it to do. But I, as the player, am completely fine, I guess. There's kind of two ways to look at it, really. I don't know. I kind of like the idea that you do end up pantsless, and that sort of leads me down that route.
Yeah, I mean, like in the Naked Gun movies, like they, use O.J. Simpson's character a lot for the like, hey, this is the person who is actually just getting the anvils falling on his head.
Right. Yeah.
But there are multiple times where Frank Drebin, he's getting attacked by dogs. He's swimming through raw sewage. Like there's a lot of like other ways to sort of like clown on him that don't just result on him constantly slipping on banana peels. And maybe that's more the tact to say it's like, oh, you can go down this route and bad things are going to happen to you. But it's not like, a Jerry Lewis situation where you were just constantly crashing into dishes and falling over tables and, throwing pies in the face of wealthy dowagers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, another way to think of it is more like Johnny English, if you've ever seen that film. A great example might be the sort of knockout toxin that he's got in his ring, and he stabs himself and then half his body goes numb. Right. Is it like, could you start each level with like, you've got a gadget and then the gadget somehow affects you as the player?
You're immediately paralyzed like one side of you.
That's actually a great idea.
You've got a normal Hitman level, but you are hindered in some way.
And that just happens every time. Like you get some cool gadget that's supposed to be the thing that like gets you through the mission, but you inevitably screw it up. And now suddenly, like you said, the left side of your body isn't working. Suddenly, all the audio is gone, so like you can't hear what anyone is saying to you. But you have to get through these really elaborate conversations while you're undercover.
You you've got nitroglycerin toothpaste and you brush your teeth with it in the morning so you can't move too fast or your head explodes.
Yes.
Wow, you've really thought this one. I mean, James, you made a game where the controls are, I mean, you might disagree with me, but drink more glurp, the controls are, I would say, purposely difficult. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We didn't want anybody to be good at the game. So,
and the humor from that comes from like, so Drink More Glurp, Alex, is like a sports, like a multiplayer sports versus game where you play as like these little alien blobs with long arms, right? And then you're in Olympic events. And the humor from that comes from trying to do very simple tasks like throwing the javelin, or like throwing things, running, but it's incredibly
difficult. You're just some bandy-armed idiot.
Having something that is inhibiting your character.
Right.
Like maybe if you were really good at it, you could fulfill these things. You could actually be a good hitman and fulfill the level if you really tried. But it's very, very almost impossible.
But that almost has a separate layer for players where it's like, okay, I want to play and I want to be bad. But then there's like such a high skill ceiling. It's like, no, I'm actually going to become a really good assassin, hitman.
Right.
You'll see perfect run
half
videos
my
on
body's
YouTube.
numb. Yeah, exactly.
My teeth explode across the dance floor.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you have to collect all your teeth.
And you've got the flashbang Polaroid, and you take a selfie before the level starts, and you're like, everything's a bit blurry, and you can't quite see.
You can't make out the face of anyone, let alone your target.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you assassinate? Yeah, faceless target. That's awesome.
I've combined a few things that we've all said into what I thought would be a nice way, and also add variation to playstyles and things, is that you choose your loadout, so all the gadgets you want, but every gadget has a benefit and a thing. If when you use it, you hit the percentage of like fucking up. So say you got a 50% chance of every time you have a little stun device that you can stun people, but you have a 50% chance that you'll stun yourself. So then all of a sudden that changes the way you need to approach that situation, because you've stunned yourself in the middle of trying to like drag a body and you're trying to stun someone else. So you're like, okay, now I need to improvise. So I'm going to get my laser watch out and try and open a vent. But instead you you singe your arm, and now you've only got one arm. And because it's physics based, like the Gang Beast style, you've now got to only got one stick that controls the arm. So yeah, okay, fine. So I think doing it like that, where you that way you can cause accidents, because you don't take away the intent from the player of, I want to pull this, but all of a sudden a new thing has happened, and it feels a lot more random and like everything is against the player. Where with choosing your loadout to go, okay, I'm going to approach this mission like this, I need to find and take out this person. Last time I did it with the C4, but I accidentally blew up my leg and injured myself. So I was at half speed for the entire level. So I won't take that this time. I'm going to take this. That's fine. But as I said,
only half speed.
In this, the protagonist never gets hurt, like injured. They only get a minor sort of like bruising and a temporary just things that happen to them. And I think that's the better way of doing it, because it's always on the player then. And if you put the one thing I put a lot of people get with games is where they think the game's against them. And if it's the player's fault, they have no one to blame but themselves. And they were like, okay, last time I did this, not last time the game did this to me. And there's a lot more.
It's like a distinction.
I think it's a little better way to approach it. And also it combines a lot of that slapstick that can happen, but also then having to think and completely change your plans on an action that you thought you was going to go one way and then goes another because you're an idiot.
Yeah, like a lot of the way I envision this is like, Hitman is a game that is very much like the challenge is in not making mistakes. It's in, the AI is very tuned to try and make you, work with, like, wriggle your way around them so that you can get to the things that you need to do and do them well. I don't envision this as being a particularly tough game. Like, it is not a game that is about like, intense skill play. It is much more about like reaction. It is about just like thinking in the moment, like, okay, what is, let's just say I'm dragging a body. I've been discovered. I just tried to throw the stun grenade and suddenly, half my body, I can't see anything. because, so I can't really fight this person. So you have a couple of options in front of you. You can either try and run away, in which case, you slip on an oil slick and then, it fall down and the guy lunges at you and then hits the wall or something. Or, you lunge at them, but then you trip and fall and you end up headbutting them in the crotch. And that's how they go down. Like that kind of, it's not so much about like, you have to fight these enemies and you have to like, make sure that your skill set is built up in such a way that, you can handle these encounters. It's more about just being like, okay, what reaction am I going to have when things go haywire, and what stupid joke will fall out of whatever reaction I have.
Yeah. I mean, I want to see like what kind of levels are they like? I mean, that's what's so good about Hitman is like all the levels are so exciting when you have like these different kinds of levels. You kind of think, oh, okay, so I'm in a small, a small little parochial town. What kind of business is going to happen now? Like, what kind of hijinks can I do? In Hitman, it's like that. But in this, I think also like the idea of like what would this game be like in like a huge mansion in Dartmoor? Again, like how would that stuff play out?
But wouldn't you want to like lean into it so that from the second you step into a level, you're like, like this level is very dangerous. So it's like a bull in a china shop kind of thing. You almost want, you want when your handler or whatever is doing the talk through of the level, just everything is danger zone. It's like, oh, we're here, we're unveiling this giant glass, whatever. Statue of, it's a replica of the entire building the entire building is made out of glass, and you're like, oh no, I'm bringing this idiot into the situation. But I can't think of anything better than a building made of glass. It's got to be.
Well, I think that could be a thing. It could be like, okay, in this mission, you're not allowed to make any noise above like X decibels, and you find out it's at like a pottery convention, and you're like, oh shit, and everything's just like high shelves of like vases, literally a bull in a china shop.
Target are you going to need to assassinate at a pottery convention?
Old Gary Vase,
the inventor of the vase.
The inventor of the vase.
What about like a bubble wrap factory? Just everywhere, just bubble wrap the whole thing.
It's the bubble wrap factory, but it's just littered with things that actually will stab and injure you all over the place.
So I guess like, is it still assassination all the way through? Is that like you're an incompetent hitman working for, I guess, an equally incompetent agency because they hired you in the first place? I
mean, I think you could also play into general espionage and, sort of like spy type missions. Like, I think in general, there needs to be a target of some kind in each of these, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you have to go kill this person, though I would assume that most missions will result in you doing that anyway. But like there might be a mission where it's like, hey, we're at this big fancy, and I'm going back to Naked Gun here, but there's this big fancy soiree for the Queen of England, and you have to make sure that A, the Queen doesn't get assassinated, and 2, also don't bother the Queen, and you end up bothering the Queen very, very much.
And it could be like you need to take photos of these targets doing this, and this, and extract. But your camera flash could alert everyone, or you flash yourself and you've just fallen off a balcony into the middle of the dance party.
You've fallen into the bass drum of a marching band, and you're walking around with that on your head.
You're just taking pictures of your own face.
The disguises,
that's all you come back with.
The disguises could be great as well, and I think it really would be benefited from that Gang Beast style physics animated controller. I think that's just it adds comedy itself.
I mean, there has to be some element of like suspension of disbelief for the people, for the NPCs in the world, right? Because as soon as you walk into that space, your general movement is going to put people off and make them suspicious if you're trying to fumble around like a weird physics Gang Beast style creature. Even just like struggling to move around.
So Gang Beasts, like the simple controls in Gang Beasts, you've got the punch that in itself looks stupid, and I think if that was the fighting, that would be hilarious. And also the fact that you can raise your arms up and they flop around, that you could feign surrender, and it would look really funny. And then as he comes over, you just sort of like hit him with a bucket or something, which you've accidentally grabbed because your hand's behind and you've accidentally grabbed it off the shelf you were near, but it's worked out. Right, or you
just accidentally pull the shelf with you.
Head in it. Yeah, exactly. Like
I like the image of you pulling the shelf down on top of yourself, and then that's how you scurry away.
Also, you also got them, so you lucked out.
I love the idea that everybody's in on it. So everyone knows that you fail the mission if you kill your target. Because someone's just taken you for a day out, and it's like, can you just behave? And you're running around pretending to be this assassin, and maybe that's a bit too meta. But the other, oh man, it's gone from my mind now. The other idea was, other things that we could do. Driving mission, of course, got to have a driving mission with all the gadgets in the car.
Spy hunter shit.
Like let off the ejector seat, and you're the one. You set off your own seat.
It's an oil slick, but you accidentally spray it forward.
Yes, exactly.
And the other one would be you've got to crawl around some vents that obviously everybody. I mean, the whole idea of crawling around a vent and no one can hear you. Just like, it's just all these people just hearing like clung, clung, clung as you're like climbing around the vent.
Oh, I like the idea of like a picture-in-picture, which shows lots of people pointing to where you are in the vent, and being like,
it's like you just hear a muffled conversation below. You're just like, what the hell is that noise? What is going on?
It's like
dents and stuff.
Yeah, it's like Sniper Elite. So you have to move when the band starts up, and if you make then they'll stop. Or every time someone keeps trying to make a toast, so you have to stop as they like ding their drink, and everyone quietens down. So you have to just sort of stand still, and then it picks back up again, and you can move again. But if you make too much noise, they all start looking up. I think that could be interesting as well.
Yeah. Just a big angry crowd waiting for you at the end of the vent when you leave. They're just like, what are you doing in the vent? And you're like, I'm sorry.
Just crossed arms and tapping their toes at you, and just as you crawl
I shouldn't have been in there.
Luckily, you bought your vent inspector ID card with you.
I do
that's how you get away with it.
I really like the idea of there being multiple scenarios in each map where you have to try and talk your way out of something, but all the options are bad. Like none of the excuses are convincing whatsoever. They barely string together. Like like you just keep having to invent new details to try and get your way out of it.
Yeah,
I think Hitman would be a lot different game if you had the ability to have dialogue options that had a chance of failing or succeeding based on like the disguise you were wearing. So like a guy catches you, it's like,
I'm a mechanic.
Oh, I'm from the council, and it's like, you're dressed up as a chicken mascot.
You're a flamingo.
Yeah.
Why have you
you're like, yes.
I like the idea that you're trying to just do things that a hitman would normally find fairly easy, fairly simple, straightforward tasks. But you, as an incompetent hitman, are really struggling to accomplish really anything. And the most you can hope for is that you accidentally succeed.
Right.
Do we ever run into a problem where if the tone of it is like super funny and it's all like hijinks and dumb mistakes, that for a level to end in murder is a bit bleak?
Everyone's dead. You actually killed everyone in this entire building.
Well, if for like 1 second your trousers are falling down, and the next second like you're strangling an old lady or something, it's got a very different vibe.
I do think you probably have to shy away from like long depictions of violent murder. I think it really does have to be a lot more like, whoops, you accidentally deflated this giant balloon and now everyone is being smothered with it. Like it's that.
Right.
It has to be.
You can just hear their muffled screams.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's off camera gunshots in films.
Yeah,
that's what you want. It's the idea of murder.
You hear the gunshot, you hear the woman scream, you hear the dog bark, and then the siren goes by, and that's it.
Yeah, perfect. I also like the idea of like at the end of Hitman when you've accomplished the task and you have the couple of minutes where you feel really badass when you're walking away to the extraction point, doing that. But in this game, I think could be quite funny. Like especially if you're trying to basically get out of the building. Yeah, just falling over, just accomplishing the task and then getting hit by a car as you leave the building.
With toilet paper stuck to the bottom of your shoe.
Taking off on a jet ski, but you fall right off the jet ski and it just takes off without you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think at the moment we have basically like Hitman where you play it's Idiot Hitman, right? It's still Idiot, but like the main, I guess, mechanics of the game is that it's harder to control, but also it can't feel like, I guess, the game is punishing the player. The player has to feel like they're the ones making the mistakes, and that's funny. And so is that, Chris, where you were saying like you would have access to certain tools, but the more you use them, the high chance there is that it would mess up?
Well, that could be it. Like, so the earlier you use them in the thing, there's obviously a less percentage chance that they would, maybe they break over time because you're incompetent. And like, so the earlier you use them, the more likely they are to work. But I think being able to choose your loadout, because obviously in Hitman, there are different ways to attack a situation depending on the level. And I think with this, that could also add to that where you're like, okay, last time I took these 3 things or any number of things, but now I need to take these 3. Oh, and because I completed that last mission, I could buy a new gadget and I don't know how to use that yet. So I think what that should happen is that you find out what the gadget is, but you don't know either of the things that it does until you use it once. And then that way it's like you're learning on the job. So, all of a sudden, you've got a thing that's called like a stun watch, and you assume that if you touch someone, hit someone whilst you've got the stun watch on, it's going to stun them, but it might not. Maybe you accidentally you go near some metal or some water and you're standing in it and you stun yourself.
Right.
And I think that that the player should have to learn how to use the gadgets that way.
Yeah, like I imagine,
just because I think that's funny.
I imagine in that scenario, like there is a briefing before every mission, and part of that briefing is, the Q guy coming up and being like, okay, here are the gadgets we're giving you for this. This is what this is. And then the whole time he's explaining it, like you're just having this internal monologue of like remembering what you ate for lunch that day, did I remember to turn the oven off, like that kind of thing. And then once he gets through the explanation, he's just like, so have you got it? And you're like, yeah, I've got it.
Absolutely, yeah. Sunwatch.
So you don't actually know.
Keep zooming in on an ant crawling up the back wall. I was looking at.
Does he know that spider's on his shoulder? Should I try and flip it off? Is that going to be rude?
What was that in James Bond? The clicky pen that explodes, and it's like, don't click it 3 times, only click it 2 times. And if you're just like hearing mop 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 mop, and you're
it's the holy hand grenade. That's what you want. It's the really long explanation for something that's very simple and overly complicated.
I'm down for that.
A really complicated activation sequence for a vital gadget that would be great.
Yes.
Like click it this, leave a second, click it twice, leave a second, click it 3 times. You're just there clicking this thing, spraying ink everywhere.
As a guard slowly comes towards you, and you're just like, 1 second. Yeah.
Shit. I'm from the council. What about like failure states? Is there like a suspicion meter, or can you die? Or can you not? Like, is it like, how does it work?
Imagine Mr. Bean, where Mr. Bean could die. That's so sinister.
The opening
got such
scene.
Different energy to it.
I mean, in my mind, the only way you can really fail is if you fail to react. Like if you fail to engage in something, if you just stand there for too long and don't, choose one of the various environmental options or, gadget options in front of you and dialogue options, whatever. If you just let the enemies do something before you do something, then maybe that is where you fall apart. But in my mind, the way the chaos system works is that as long as you are doing things, it doesn't matter how much you are layering the chaos on top of chaos. That is not a failure. It is just that things have become weirder and maybe more challenging based on, like where things are going on the map.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of the chaos engine, chaos meter or whatever it was. I think, not like there should be maybe a failure state where you have to do something, but it should be at a very extreme level where things have gone so wrong that you really cannot complete your mission. But like if a guard catches you, there are like dialogue, or you can spam X to wriggle out, but when you wriggle out, like he can see you doing it, and like you have to do it when he turns away, and if you just comes back and relocks it, and you're like, oh,
I love
crap.
the idea of like the guard like just wondering what you're doing, be like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing in this vent? And then you have a certain amount of seconds to try and react, but then you just use the stun watch, stun yourself, fall out of the vent, and then you get locked up.
It's the classic Telltale Games approach, isn't it? Of like, which response do I want, and then you
kind
get
of make
like
them panic a little bit.
a second, so you almost like you don't even know what you're guessing. You're just like, that's my choice. I kind of like that.
You grab a hammer off a shelf and you think you're going to knock the guy out with it, but it just makes a little squeaky sound when it hits him on the head, and then you have to figure out what to do from there.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans out and it's just like Bob's comedy hammer and
Okay, so we have a Hitman where you play as an incompetent hitman who is difficult to control and also uses gadgets that often will not function correctly. Is not very good in conversations, trying to talk their way out of anything, who gets caught frequently. And the aim of the game is to, I guess, complete the level by any means necessary.
Yes.
Inevitably in a way that will wreak a lot of destruction and chaos in a way that the actual Hitman series would never do. Because I guess like the aim of that is to walk out of the mission feeling cool. In this, you're going to kind of be walking out of the mission probably just laughing at how thankful that you somehow made it. Okay, Chris, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I really like it. I think there needs more games that are serious in tone should have comedy versions of them, to a degree. But yeah, I think the idea of like going to use something and then it not doing the thing you expected it to do, therefore having to react and maybe doing something else that then also didn't do what you expected it to do, and having to then just compound these reactions until something just goes your way. It's really good. And like, it always feels like it's your sort of fault because you were like, oh, why did I use that then? Of course that was going to happen. I was, trying to stun a man while standing in a puddle of water. What did I expect to happen? And just like noticing those patterns as well. Like there is a game there. Yeah. There are mechanics that you can rely on as like, oh, okay, I figured this out. If I do this thing with the water and a guard walks through it, I can stun him. Okay, so you go to do it, and that's when it goes wrong. So you have such really good intentions, but it never really goes your way sometimes.
Like in that way, maybe it's a little bit like I'm trying to think of that game that I played recently. Do you know Unto the End? Unto the End is a platformer where you just, I think you have to find your family, basically. You have to get back to your family. But the idea of that is it's really, really tough. And a lot of the times you'll fail, you'll immediately die, and there was no way to actually have seen what was going to happen at that point. You're just like, okay, I have to restart, and now I know that this rock's going to fall at this point. So maybe the idea of going in this, like you stun yourself because like there was no way to know that like, or you're not paying attention to the fact that there was a puddle right there. Like there are so many different environmental factors going on that you're like, okay, now I know if I replay this, if I do this run again, then I won't. I'll just dodge this puddle. But then there's something else in the way there. Like I think just lots of different environmental things just constantly like working against you, trying to mess up what you're doing. And James, what are you thinking of this?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I really like the idea. Just one more idea that there's an escort mission. And you've got this like ragdolling person being bandied around behind you while you're dragging them through a
accidentally knock your escort out.
Yeah, exactly.
Weekend at Bernie's vibes.
Yeah. Just the idea that we can set up these elaborate like Rube Goldberg style levels where you do one action and then you have this chain reaction. I think that sounds really great, and all the gadgets and everything. Yeah, sign me up. I want to play it.
Yeah. Matt, are you in?
Yeah, I'm on board with all this nonsense. The only thing I'd like to add is at the end, I think for like a rating system of how you've done, it should be how like red your face is burning with embarrassment. So like, if you did it very smoothly, you just look like yourself. But if you really messed it up, like bright red, total humiliation.
It's like it's that and a dollar tally or pounds tally of how much damage you have done in the level.
Yeah.
Okay, so Idiot Hitman. Alex, do you think? Are you happy with kind of where we've gone with this?
Oh, you have taken an idea that I had as a rough sketch, and you have given it some actual like texture, which I greatly appreciate. Like I think there are some really good ideas in there.
Fantastic. All right, so maybe that guy who occasionally does little games for us, who's listening, can do some kind of prototype for this. It sounds quite difficult, but if you're listening and you have any ideas that you might want to add, then you can let us know in the comments of this or on Twitter at PitchPleasePod without any vowels. We've changed it. I'm sorry for all the 60 episodes
worst
previously.
Twitter tag of all time.
So bad.
I have lots of reasons why I had it like it was in the original, and lots of reasons why I've now changed it. They were all bad reasons, but it is what it is now.
It's bad before and it's bad now.
Yeah, it's worse now. But Pitch Please Pod, no vowels. That's where you can let us know. And Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was fantastic. You're very welcome. Maybe in the future you can come back on and tell us about your truck, your spooky truck game.
I'd be more than happy to.
And Chris, James, Matt, thank you very much. And we'll all see you next time.
See you later.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Hello, I bet you thought this was going to be one of those little funny bits that we put at the end of the episodes, but it's not. I just wanted to tell you about Tiny Teams Festival, which is happening. It's happening right now. If you're listening, between August 7th and 14th, it's happening right now. Have you heard of it, Chris?
I have indeed, Alex. Not only can you save money on some great games made by great tiny people. They're not the people are
massive
tiny.
games.
Massive games made by tiny people. You can also play some demos of some unreleased games that haven't come out yet.
And not only is it on Steam, we're going to be streaming stuff every day, all day of the week. We're going to be playing all of these games that are out and coming soon.
Where are we playing those, Alex?
On twitch.tv/Yogscast, but also on the event page, which will be on Steam. You'll find us on Steam. I'll put a link in the description. Come and have a look. There's going to be something you're either going to want to wishlist or you're going to want to buy, and it's going to be on sale, because we're going to have huge games that are on sale, like Phasmophobia. That's made by one person. Stardew Valley, everyone knows that's made by one person. Amazing. Good job, Eric. And there are so many other games that are just made by a couple of people that are all part of this festival. They're amazing. We'll be on the front page for like a couple of days. You'll find us. We're everywhere. But follow the link in the description as well. I'll put something down there. And somewhere in there, you're going to find a game that you're going to fucking love.
Yes.
Okay. That'll do.